Sometimes in life, it feels like everything is coming together. The important things, the precious things, the good things, they're all in one piece. The problem is that when life happens, we begin to see that the things that matter most to us are breaking apart. It's usually at this time in life when we begin to doubt, when we begin to wonder, does God see what's happening? Does He care? And in the middle of trying to gather up what's been broken, what we don't realize is that it's the very pieces that God uses, that somehow, even in the middle of all this breaking, He's gathering. He's collecting the pieces of the things that matter most to us, and even though it just looks like broken pieces, He has a plan. And that plan is to bring something of beauty from the pieces of our lives that feel beyond repair. And not just beauty. He brings value. He's adding something to the very places that feel the most damaged. This is because He is a master builder. He can remember the original design better than we can. He is detailed and compassionate. He's consistent and He's careful. Our only job in the process is to let Him and to trust what's on the other side is wholeness.
Well, welcome everybody. Brewster, good to have you tuning in with us. I think my buddy K-Dub's running the ship there in Brewster. We sent Pastor Billy and his wife Joyce and the leadership team. They're at a big conference down in California right now. Yeah, big time. Billy was scared to death to leave Brewster, but I told him it would be okay. They went from Brewster to Oakland. That's like going from heaven to hell. So hopefully they make it back and they come back with all kinds of great energy and new ideas. If you're watching online this morning, thanks for tuning in. Mom, thanks for tuning in Cedar Falls, Iowa. I hope you're feeling better. And all of you that made it here in Chelan, thanks so much for being here. This is just to old people, what was the best year of your life? Like looking back in your life. Middle school and high schools, I don't know. Maybe you can do that. Like when you were 4, that was the best year. I don't know how you do it if you're not very old. I say this all the time. All my friends know this. If I could go back to my junior year in high school, I'd do it today. I don't have those daughters to worry about. But I was dating Darlene. My parents were together. My family was whole. I hung out with my brother and my best friend Huey, who are still my best friends. If you hung out with me in 1979, if you hung out with me in Nampa, Idaho, we would be attending Nampa Christian High School, home of the Trojans, and we would play a lot of sports, but we would spend a lot of time at the Karcher Mall. I don't know if you know what a mall is. They don't exist very much anymore, but back then that's the only mall we had in, I think, all of Idaho. And I think there was like 13 stores. There was a Bon Marché. Anyone? And a Orange Julius. Yeah. So we spent a lot of time there. But the reason we would go there is we'd have time like after school, before a football game or something like that. We'd go to Karcher Mall. We'd go on weekends, and we head to the arcade. And that's in the late 70s. That's when Asteroids was just the best. All right. And again, some of you old people are with me. You played Galaga and Pac-Man and Tron, right? But asteroids was king. And asteroids essentially was this. Here's what the screen looked like. You're the little teeny triangle, all right? And obviously in the late 70s, the graphics were just really astronomical. The clarity of it. And so you're this little ship, and you're in the middle of space, all right? And you have these controls. You can go forward, backwards, you can thrust and fire. So your job is to stay alive, all right? And it starts out easy. You see one or two rocks, asteroids come, and there's a ship here and there, and you can shoot them. But then once you start shooting them, they break into smaller pieces, and then they're all coming at you. It's just chaos. And if you've never played before and you're not used to the controls, you're like, what do I do? They hit you and you die. But once you get going, and they're coming from all over, and you don't know what to do, and you don't know your next move, and you can't fire anymore. What do you got? Hyperspace. Thank you, old people. Hyperspace. If you click the hyperspace button, it magically takes you to another dimension. It gets you out of trouble. All of the pressures from the asteroids and rocks are coming out, they're going to kill you. One click of the button, you're like, wouldn't it be great if you had a life hyperspace button? Like, not just problems, but like habits, pain. Like, you're like, this is too much, and you can just press a button. We've been talking through this Built When Broken series for the last few weeks, and the idea is that maybe like the Japanese art of kintsugi, maybe there's beauty in brokenness. The Japanese believe that you can take a clay pot, a ceramic pot, and break it. And when you put it back together with this gold lacquer and stuff, not only is it stronger, it's more beautiful. That before it was broken and put back together, it wasn't as valuable as afterwards. So the point we've been trying to make the last few weeks is maybe in your brokenness, in what you're going through or been through, maybe when you come out on the other side, maybe there's hope that you're in a better place, a better person, in a better direction. Now, the problem with that is, if you walked in here this morning, or you tuned in, whether in Brewster or online, and you said, yeah, my life is really out of control. There's a lot going on that I wish wasn't going on. And then someone like me stands up in front of you and says, good for you, I'm glad you're broken, because you're gonna pay off. You're gonna be a kintsugi pot put back together, and you're like, I don't care. Because in the middle of your pain, you're still in pain. And I can say, okay, I'll believe. There's hope beyond this, and I'll believe it for the both of us until you believe it, and blah, blah, blah. But it still hurts, right? Because pain is everywhere, and it hurts. The last 3 weeks, we've talked about this. That seems so obvious, but you can't run into anybody at any age that isn't bumping into or hasn't bumped into some kind of pain. And the problem with pain is it keeps me from living the life I want to live. Whether that's physical pain or emotional pain or spiritual pain, whatever that is, you can't be who you want to be. And I would add in, you can't be who you were created to be if pain is dominating and winning. And the thing that's disappointing for me and my personality is pain is uncontrollable on my own. For the longest time, I thought, I got this. I can do something about this. It's just not true. And all of us don't believe that yet, but you will someday. And all this pain leads to and creates what Celebrate Recovery calls hurts, habits, and hang-ups. Celebrate Recovery is a 12-step Christian recovery program. You've heard a lot about it the last few weeks. We're going to relaunch it. More information to come. Hopefully after the first of the year. Currently we're in the process of putting together a job description. We're going to hire someone at least part-time to run it and put a team together. If you're interested in that, I'll have more to say about that in the weeks and months to come. But just let us know on the blue card, like, hey, love to come to intro meeting or information meeting, let me know. But Celebrate Recovery says, yeah, listen, undealt with pain leads to stuff that you don't want in your life. So we talked about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we said, so step one is you got to get help. You have to admit you're not God. You can't do it. First step in getting help, the first step of the 12 steps is admit you can't do it. Number one is get help. Number two is open up. Number one says, yeah, I can't do this. Number two says, maybe there's somebody or something else that can do this. And you open up to the fact that you can recognize that God has the power to heal your pain. Step three is depend on Jesus. That you turn your life completely over to Jesus. Now listen, if you're here, you're not a church person, you showed up online, or you're at Brewster or here in Chelan, just hang in there. You're like, I don't know about all this Jesus stuff. I don't know about this church stuff. The steps are the steps are the steps. But you got to do something. You got stuff in your life, and it's maybe been going on just this weekend, but maybe it's been going on for the last few months, last few years. And you're like, I wish it was different. I wish I could stop. Or maybe I can stop. But if you could change, you would change. And you haven't, so you can't. So maybe this morning, there's some new information, there's some new steps, there's some new tools that can help you process pain and get through it and move on. And even after the broken time you've been through or in, you come out the other side in a better place. So, this morning I want to talk about what's getting in the way specifically for you. And I'm just telling you right now, it's going to be a completely incomplete sermon. Because it's too big a subject. I don't know what you struggle with. I don't know where you are. I can't, this is way too vast of subject. So I'm going to take this huge subject and I'm just going to go like this for about 20 minutes. What is your hard habit to break? Again, old people, we stole that from who? Wow. Chicago, the band, not the musical. Chicago sang, and they were singing to a girl. Men, we know that. Most women are a hard habit to break. Well, it's not that funny. It's true, all the women are giggling. Yeah. What's your hard habit? What thing is getting in your way right now? Like you prayed, maybe, and you asked God to stop, to break the habit, to help you not do it again. You prayed about it. You promised God you would do this and you would do that. And maybe you stopped for a bit and no, came back. Maybe like, I do not want to keep losing my temper with my kids and cussing at them. First of all, I met some of your kids. I'd cuss at them too. But you don't want to do that. All right? They're not my kids. I can cuss at them. All right? You don't want to do that. So then you go through this process and pick your issue. Maybe your issue isn't getting mad at your kids. Whatever your issue is, you're like, I don't want to do that. That's not healthy. So you say, okay, I'm not going to do that. You decide on Saturday night. Sunday morning you get up, you don't yell at your kids. And they're out of control. I saw them run across the parking lot this morning. You're like, what do I do with these kids? But you don't lose your temper. You come in here, you sing worship songs and everything, and like, this is great and everything. Everything's fine. And you load your kids up in the car, and before you get home, you are yelling and cussing at them because they're just little jerks in the back. Like, what happened? Then you feel bad, and you feel this shame, which takes your habit and even entrenches it more into your life, because shame always produces more bad behavior. You're like, then you wake up Monday and say, I shouldn't have yelled at my kids and cussed at them. And it starts all over again. Again, what's your issue? I don't know it. Maybe you drink too much. Maybe you worry too much. Maybe it's something that has its tentacles deep down inside you, like depression and anxiety. And I ain't beating you up over that. And I'm not, if you leave here this morning, listen, if you leave here this morning, you said, Kyle said I didn't have enough faith. I'm not saying that at all. We all got something that we're struggling with. Eat too much. Worry too much. Yell too much. Find yourself on the internet. And sometimes you're even in nice places, but all of a sudden you're like, how am I on here for 3 hours? I'm watching a cat on water skis jumping over a log, and you've wasted 3 hours. Or sometimes you may be thinking, I'm just going to go watch cats on water skis, and then you find yourself at sites and places where you know you shouldn't be. You're like, it's not affecting anybody but me. You know deep down that's not true. So, you tried to stop, you didn't work. So now it's affecting people around you. It's affecting your present job, future outcomes. Maybe you've got to the point, certainly I have many times in my life, where I've said, why can't I stop? What keeps me from doing what I know I should do? And what motivates me to keep doing what I know I shouldn't do? And not even like it's against the rules of God. It's just not good for me. It's not good for my marriage. It's not good for my kids. It's not good for my job. Why can't I stop? That's the question we're going to attempt to answer. And again, I'm going to do the best with this huge subject, but I'm going to just narrow it right here. The reason most of us, and again, I know it's too simplistic, all right? The reason most of us struggle and can't stop doing what we're doing is because we have the right intentions, but we have the wrong strategy. What you've been doing is the wrong strategy. Because if it was the right strategy, it would work, right? It ain't working. You might as well try something else. There's some factors working against us. Things that keep us doing things that aren't good for us, that we don't want to do, that just, they're causing pain or we're covering up pain. First of all, practically speaking, the reason you eat horribly bad food is because when you go to your refrigerator, there's horribly bad food in there. That's just practically speaking, right? Every time you do meth, you're hanging out with your friends who do meth. So practically speaking, the reason you're caught in a bad behavior is because you're hanging out in places that create bad behavior. You're like, well, that's not me. All my friends are church friends. All right, I'll get to you. Emotionally, not just practical factors, but there's emotional factors that work into that. You've got unresolved issues, and who doesn't? And maybe they're from your childhood. Listen, you remember when you were in middle school and you were in love, whatever that meant then. And that girl said, I don't want to be with you anymore. And you were crushed, and everyone around you said, yeah, you'll get over it. You're just a middle school crush. And even that little thing, when you think back about it, creates this I'm not good enough thing. And then you look for things along the way that reinforce that you're not good enough. And now as an adult, you're like, yeah, I don't feel good enough. And it came from all these little things in the past. Or maybe some trauma, some big trauma. Or maybe it's relational. Maybe it's relational. Who you hang out with oftentimes affects how you feel and how you act. As we head toward Thanksgiving, you're going to hang out with people, your relatives, that bring up feelings and thoughts that you don't have when you're not around that relative. Who you hang out with and how they make you feel. Maybe that's at your job. When people are messing with you and your emotions and the way they treat you, even with their words, and even in the name of Jesus or in the name of church, man, that has a huge lasting effect. Or maybe it's physical. Maybe you're just predisposed to certain behaviors. Obviously, we know that with addiction and alcoholism and stuff like that, that scientifically, physically, we're predisposed to stuff like that. Maybe there's a chemical imbalance that you need to talk to some experts and professionals about. I mean, maybe you're raised in a way where your parents were physically this and they struggle with these things, so now you do too. I mean, all those factors are at play, for sure. And again, could we take each one of them and talk for 2 hours about each one of them? Yeah, and some of you that are better at this and psychologically and counselors and all that stuff, even teachers, would do better with that. But I'm saying as much as those factors are at play, I guarantee they are, I'm going to tell you that the number one factor that causes you to stay stuck in your pain is spiritual. And not like if you go to church, you won't struggle. If you pray more, everything will get better. I'm saying that the main problem is spiritual emptiness. That I, in my life, have tried to fill up a spiritual need with something other than God. And just hang in there if you're not like a God person yet, or you're not yet a church person. That's okay. That there's this emptiness in me. There's this longing inside of me. And I have come along and tried to use this and this and this and this to fill that emptiness, and it's not working. Because that emptiness can't be filled by fixing my physical or emotional or relational situation. It's much more spiritual. And you think, okay, if I go to church, everything's fine. I don't know. I think most of us who are raised in the church and Christians struggle as much or more than people that didn't. Because we were raised in this environment that makes covering up pain, addiction, phoniness, dishonesty grow. Now, maybe that's not you, but that was me. See, the reason we struggle is because most of us latch on, even in the church, latch on to the poison of religion instead of the power of grace. It's two different things, y'all. You say, Kyle, what? You're a pastor, aren't you religious? No, not at all. Not at all. Guess who else wasn't religious? Jesus. You say, you're just like Jesus? Yes, I am. Listen, if you don't like phony, hypocritical church religious people, you're just like Jesus. He didn't either. See, when we talk about religion, what is religion? Because a lot of times you listen to the media and everything, and religion is everything, anything that has to do with spirituality or God or whatever, and it all gets lumped into the same thing. But religion is trying to please God without God. Trying to follow all the rules. Trying to do all the things. It's the way I was raised until I was about 14. Grandma Carlita, God rest her soul, started that process, and my dad carried it out. That it was much better to how you appeared at church and to other Christians than really what was going on in your life in reality. The appearance of righteousness was so much important than really what was going on. And that creates phoniness, hypocrisy, pain stays, you become addicted, and you have to cover it up with all kinds of different ways. But thank God, Paul says in Titus, for the grace of God has appeared that offers salvation to everybody. Listen, if you don't hear anything the rest of the time, that's great news. Rescue, whatever your challenge is. Salvation in the middle of your current situation, but ultimately also. And it's for everybody at all times. Like grace, we talk about grace, we kick around grace. Grace comes up in different places. But what's grace? Grace is the unearned goodness and favor of God. Great, how do I get that? Come to church every week. Quit doing bad things. Only listen to Christian music. No, it's unearned. That's the good news. The grace that comes from, get this now, the grace that comes from God through Jesus is the power in your life that can move you through pain and keep you from getting stuck. That can move you from that bad habit that has control on you and frees you to live the life you want to live. And here's the problem. If you've been in the church a long time, or you're like, hey, I gave my life to Jesus. When you say yes to Jesus, when you say, hey, I need a rescuer, I need a savior, I can't take away this sin in my life. I can't take away the stuff that keeps me at a distance from God. I can't do that on my own. When you make a decision, you say, yeah, but Jesus can. And you say, Jesus, come on in. I'm going to depend on you. A lot of us, me included, when that happened for us as followers of Jesus, we thought, okay, God saved me, now I got to work this out myself. God saved me, but I got to do all the right things to keep in good standing with Him. That ultimately salvation was offered to me, but now I got to work to keep it. I'm telling you, the grace that saves you is the grace that sustains you. The grace that said, come on in, have a relationship with God through Jesus, is the same grace that says, come on in, let's work on this pain, addiction, habit that's getting in your way. It's the same power. So that Paul goes on and he says, the grace of God has appeared to offer salvation to everybody. It teaches us grace. Unearned grace. Teaches us to say no to what? Ungodliness and worldly passion, stuff that gets in your way. To live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age. The grace that saves you is the grace that sustains you. A lot of us that have been raised in or found faith in church, we keep spinning our wheels because we're using our own power to try to get our lives unstuck. But the same power that brought us to Jesus is the same power that gets us through life. It's not your grit. It's God's grace. It's not your strength. It's God's Spirit. Listen, as I say that, and I look at the PowerPoint, I'm like, I know. Like, blah, blah, blah. Listen, that's just not preacher talk. There's many of you sitting here who could say, I was stuck in this and I'm not stuck there anymore. I was addicted to that and I'm not there anymore. My relationships were, just messed up, and that's not the way it is anymore. Why? Because you worked hard and you changed and you did. No. Because at some point in my life, I said, I can't do this anymore. And I've done everything I've tried to do. Listen, how does grace change you? How does grace change me? The focus of religion is outward. The focus of religion says, hey, look at me. The focus of religion forces us to, when I was a kid, have a bigger, newer Bible. No more answers. Not go to movies. My dad wouldn't even let me. Ruby was on the right side of the street. If I was downtown and there was a movie going on, we had to walk on the left side of the street. How much grace did that produce in me? It was just rule following. Religion is always outward. So when Jesus comes along, he attacks this stuff. Living, trying to be good on your own ability, in your own power, it doesn't work. So he says to the Pharisees, who that's what they were all about, and they had to follow the rules, but they made sure that you were following the rules. So Jesus says, whoa, like stop, listen to me. Teachers of the law and the Pharisees, you hypocrites. You clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but the inside, they are full of greed and self-indulgence. On the outward, you look great. It's all clean. But inside, you're a mess. Blind Pharisee. He is going after him like, lighten up, Francis. Blind Pharisee. First, clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside will also be clean. We're so concerned about what people think. We're so concerned about following whatever we think the rules are. And we deal with the outward. We try to change our behavior without changing on what's going on inside. I know this is a lot. The focus of religion is outward. The power of grace is inward. Man, no one knows this. Well, let me rephrase that. I know this to be so true. The day I said, okay, I give up. Can't do this anymore. And, I don't know. Pick an issue. You're like, I wonder what Kyle's issues are. Pick one. And come on. But the biggest one, and the only one I want to talk to you, I trust you guys enough to talk about, is, man, I just dominated by worry, which causes stress. I just think, and I learned it when I was little, and many of you know that there was just some stuff in my life when I was a little kid. It made me feel kind of abandoned. I thought early on in life is if I take control, everything's going to be good. And that's one of my biggest issues to deal with. And the presenting one at Celebrate Recovery when I started in the steps there. That if I have control of everything and everybody, I know that everything will be okay. Guess what? That's not true and not possible. So the day I said, and it took a while, y'all. The day I said, all right, I give up. You would have thought I would have done that a long time ago. But it was about 14, 15 years ago. And I would have to say that a bazillion times a day. And then a little bit less after a few months. Then a little bit less after a few months. And then now today, maybe just a couple times today. But there's this moment where I say, what happens inside of me when I say to God, I can't do this. This is a you thing. This is a God thing. This is too big for me. I can stay here and worry about it and chew it all over and try to get a plan in place and think I got it and feel good about it once I got a plan. Or I can say, all right, nah, this is too big for me. God, that's you. Man, I do that all the time. Ooh, wow, that's a big one. God, that's you. No, that's you. Hey, your girls need it. Yeah, I can't do that. That's you, God. Hey, your wife, no, yeah. That's you, God. In real life, we need, yeah, I can't do that. That's you, God. The power of grace starts inward. Change in life starts inward. So when the Apostle Paul says, I pray that from his glorious, unlimited resources, he will empower you with inner strength through his Spirit. That it has to start here. Listen, if you change your behavior, but you don't change your heart, the behavior usually comes back. There's a difference between, and again, I'm getting way out of my lane, sobriety and recovery. Sobriety is you stop doing a bad behavior that you've determined or people around you have determined, this isn't good, it's affecting your life poorly, and it's something you want to stop. That's sobriety. You stop doing it. Recovery is you stop doing it, but you figure out why you're doing it in the first place. What's down in here that's causing you to do that behavior that you know is not good for you anyway. If you get sobriety, okay. But a lot of us, if we don't find recovery, if we don't find what's going on internally, we'll just go back to that bad behavior. So it's the difference between try harder or trust more. If you ever find yourself in a church situation or a Christian situation and the message is try harder, run. Get as far away as possible. Through your own devices, through your own mechanisms, through your own thinking, through your own self-will. Listen, grace says, God through grace says, I got this. I'm supplying what you need. Trust me with that. You don't have to try harder. You trust more. So Paul, who's the guy, has this verse in this book called Romans and Testament who says, everything I do, I don't want to do, and the stuff I don't want to do, I keep on doing. The stuff I know I should do, I don't want to do. And it's just like, he just, in the middle of the Bible, he says, what's wrong with me? And down the road, he figures out, and he calms down, and he says, God showed up to me, and he said, my grace is sufficient for you, Paul. For my power, God's power, is made perfect in my weakness. I don't have to be good enough. I don't have to work harder. I just need to trust more that the grace of God is better than whatever power I think I have. And when you find yourself in that position where the grace of God, the strength of God, the love of God, you start feeling the acceptance of God. You start feeling the security of being connected to God, that you're accepted even though you're a mess. You didn't have to clean up your life in order for God to love you, to send Jesus, for you to be part of his family. When that starts happening, then you have the security to be honest about who you are. And you are only as strong as you are honest. Listen, you shouldn't be honest hardly anywhere, because you can't trust most people. That may be my own issue. But you got to be honest somewhere. And when you're in a relationship like with someone you trust, and you feel safe and secure, like no matter what you say, you're going to be loved anyway, that's when you're honest, right? When you understand that the grace of God that's supplied through Jesus gives you security, that he accepts you exactly where you're at, that there's hope for today and beyond today. When you understand that, you're surrounded by that, then you can say, you can be honest. And that's when life change starts to happen. That's when habits start to break away. So let me wrap up real quick. Both in Brewster, online, there's an online connection card in here in Chelan. Please communicate with us through that card. If you got a prayer request, something's going on, we'd love to pray for you, and we do. If you've got a concern or whatever. But on those are the next steps. And so I want to give you 3 next steps. I'm going to hurry through the first 2. I want to land on the last one pretty hard. First of all, number 1, there's a moment of truth. You got to admit you have a problem. Not to me. Not on the blue card. Not on Instagram. You just have to, you don't have to tell anybody. But what's going on? What's going on in your life? What habit, what thing, what thought, what feeling, what behavior is really keeping you from being who you want to be and living the life you want to live? Listen, you can't correct what you don't confront. Again, just you. Just you. If you got someone that you feel safe with and can be honest with, man, that's a great next step. 2, get more information about Celebrate Recovery. You can go online, go to celebraterecovery.com. It'll lay it all out. It's coming down the line. I'm just really moved and inspired and committed to making that happen. The elders are fully behind making that happen. We have limited resources in our valley. There are resources. We have limited resources. So Celebrate Recovery, we hope to bring that back, and more details coming. But if you're interested in that, you just want to be included, like, hey, if you have an informational meeting down the road, let me know. I'll put your name on a list, and I'll make sure we get in touch with you. If you're like, hey, I'd like to be more involved down the road, let me know. I'll put you on a list. If you're like, hey, I've got 12-step experience, and I'm kind of interested in this job, or I know someone who might be good at this job, put that on the blue card, talk to me, let me know. Finally, accept that God's saving grace is his sustaining grace. The same grace, the same power that saves you, that takes you from being completely far and distant from God into his family, is the same grace that keeps you going day to day, hour to hour, minute by minute. Paul, who was surrounded by sin in his own life, and who isn't? He just gets to this point often when he's writing to different people. And he's like, what am I going to do? I'm surrounded. I struggle constantly. And then he says, but where sin increased, where my sin increased, grace increased all the more. Like, I'm gonna get me some more sin so I can get me some more grace. Okay. You know, most of you know I was a little jerk when I was in grade school. And I really was, and I say that, and you guys are like, oh, that's so cute. No, I broke into stuff. I shoplifted from Western Auto. I stole stuff. Safeway used to be able to steal cigarettes super easy. I mean, and I always got the non-filter ones, and my friends were upset with me. I mean, we did that all the time. I was a bad kid. And I remember a moment where it was 6th grade, and I was arguing with one of my friends that who was worse. Like, he would say, you're worse than me because you stole sunglasses from Western Auto. And I'm like, you're worse because you smoke a pack a day. And we're going back and forth. And then he said, you know what? You're worse because my mom told me that your mom cries every night when she goes to sleep because of your behavior. All right. That's different. It began a new direction for me. And I wasn't yet connected to a loving relationship with Jesus, but those were the steps that started leading me there. Because when I was 14, I stumbled into the fact that I want to live for Jesus, not out of duty or following the rules, but out of devotion because he loves me, and the only reason, because I love him, and the only reason I love him because he loved me first. I want to do the right thing because I didn't want to break my mom's heart. Not just to follow the rules. Listen now. If you're hanging out at Karcher Mall at the arcade, there are asteroids all around you, and there's a hyperspace button, right? I mean, you're just chaos. It's the same thing. If you're in life right now, and many of you are, many are listening and are, and you just feel attacked on every side, and there's so much coming at you, nothing you can do. There's no hyperspace button. It's a hyper grace button. You can get a tattoo if you wanted that, or a bumper sticker. It's so beyond, when we talk about grace, it's so beyond what you think grace is. Like, that's not fair. That's not fair. You're saying that God loves people anyway, even though they're messed up, that God provides power for them, even though they keep sinning? Yes. You're like, that's not fair. No, it's not fair. Because Jesus paid the price. Of course it's not fair. You're like, okay, then it's too much. I've done too many bad things. That's too much grace. I'm not worthy of that. Of course you're not. None of us are. But God sees you in your unworthiness, and he says you're worthy because of Jesus. I'm not putting you down. I'm not saying you should hate yourself and you're so bad and your evilness put Jesus on the cross. That's not the talk at all. It's just the opposite of that. God loves you and proves it, and he offers you what you need for everything in your life that's attacking you, that's pulling you down, that's keeping you from living the life you don't want to live, and that is called grace. Now, some of us may have to go see a specialist to get back on track and understand that grace. Some of us may have to work the steps in order to find that grace. But that grace is available to you today. It's nothing that you experience anywhere in life. It's hyper grace. And that button you press for the first time, and you say, Jesus, I'm so far from God, and I want you in my life. Let's go. Press hyper grace first time. Then as you live for Jesus, you may have to press that button 50,000 times a day. Instead of depending on your own ability, you depend on the almighty ability of God. I'm going to say goodbye to Brewster. K-Dub, thanks for filling in there. Here in Chelan, let's pray. God, it's overwhelming. Most of us are overwhelmed by the pain and mistakes and sin and grief we cause in our own life and in the life of other people. But God, I ask that you help us to understand inwardly first how loved we are and what you offer and supply to us in the midst of our pain. And God, I ask that as we surrender and allow you to be in control, that we allow you to change us first from the inside, and then our behavior begins to follow. God, please start with our hearts first. In Jesus' name, amen.